Yeah, peeps, it's just back in my squat box once again, and after making a reply to Kura, I was talking about Go That Funk's video, I Suck at Relationships. I've now went and watched Go That Funk's video, and so now, Go That Funk, I'm making a video reply to you as well. I think relationships are God, you know, I'm not a relationship specialist. But I would say to you, you know, one of the first things that I learned early on in relationships, after having a couple of you know, bad experiences, you know someone for 2 years, you move in with them and it all goes fucking, you know, screw with. What I tended to do was, you know, I would, you know, find someone that I thought I loved, they thought they loved me, we love each other, they've got their flat, I've got my flat, and all that stuff, if we move in together, you know, we save money, fuck that shit, no. I mean, I've got my flat, you've got your flat, we've lived like this before we met each other, why can't we continue, you know, you keep your flat and I keep my flat, you know. And, you know, there's lots of benefits to it, because, you know, as people, as human beings, we have our off days, and then your off day, you know, you contact each other and say, do you know what, I really just don't feel like going out, I'm just not feeling good today, you know. You can't do that when you're living together, because you're living together. You can't not see each other because you're just sharing the house, you know. So that was one of the things I discovered as in my late 20s, I suppose. You know, yeah, don't move in with each other. Keep your little home base, your little sanctuary, you know. And in a way that actually, you know, helps to keep the relationship going longer. It really does, because, you know, you aren't living together, you know. And, you know, you give us that story about, you know, the old couple that you met in the McDonald's. Yeah, well, they're a different generation. They come from a generation that had a different outlook on life. Their outlook on life was, if you had a home to live in, you know, together, you know, you were fucking lucky, because not everybody gets that, you know. And when they were young, when they were in their teens, you know what I mean, they probably lived, you know, they probably got married and moved in with one family or another until they could save up enough money to rent or buy some place to go and move into, you know. And this is what it used to be like when they were young, you know. They would be living with their parents, you know, and probably have a kid while they were living with their parents, you know, and they'd have, you know, brothers and sisters living with them, you know. You know, that's the way it was. I remember back to my childhood, you know, I remember families where the son was living with the mother and father and had a kid, you know, and they were struggling to save up the money to get their own place, you know, and yes, you know, they got upset, they fought, they argued, you know, but they had this idea where no matter what, no matter how heated the arguments got, how much, you know, vitriol was thrown about, you know, during the argument, you know, you made up, you patched up, you know, other people came in, you had other family members around you to talk to you, take you aside and talk sense into you, and the other thing was happening with them, you know, and, you know, we don't have that now. We live at what where's your family? When you fall out your girlfriend, who's there to take you aside and say, do you know what, yeah, it seems terrible just now, but you know, you've got to go back and apologise and, you know, accept her apology or whatever, and, you know, and make up and, you know, and get back. We don't have that today. This is why I say, you know, don't move in. Keep that little empty space, you know, you might call your own little, you know, space, your own little home, your own little flat. Don't move in with each other. No matter how much pressure comes upon you, you know, to move in. No matter how much, well, you don't love me if you're not going to move in, you know, or let me move in with you. Just explain to them, no, the idea of living apart gives us that little breathing space, that little place when we fall out to go and gather our thoughts and not be confronting each other every second. You know, you need that little space to gather your thoughts and realise the wrong, the misunderstanding, see it from a different perspective, and then you know, go and meet each other, you know, in a neutral venue and make up, and then either go back to one place or another. You know, that's what I found in a lot of the relationships I had. Having your own little space that's yours to go back to, and you know, and yeah, go things around, fuck, you know, and then an hour or two later you calm the fuck down and you think through things. You know what? Yeah, I was probably out of all the fucking, you know, saying or doing that, you know, and you know. hopefully you've got friends who come round and don't just take your side and, you know, salve your ego on your side and say, oh, he's a cunt or she's a cunt, and yeah, you just got to phone her up and tell her to fuck off. You know, no, you want people to say no. You've got to call her up and say, look, I've calmed down. I realise, you know, we got heated there. Let's talk this through. Let's, you need a calming off period, and you need a place to calm off. And you can't do that if you're living together. You can't just go into separate rooms because you know the other person's in the next room. You know that. Oh, I should go through there and fucking do it. I didn't say this when we were arguing. I should go through there and say this now. You know. So you've got to have that calm, quiet fucking place when you've not got a family to come round and you know, hug you and say, look, we all go through this. We all experience this in relationships. You've got to, you know, gather yourself together and look at it from the long term. You know, this is just a weekend's, you know, dispute. But if you're going to be together for 50 years, you've got to make up, you know. We used to have that when we lived in families. We don't live in families now. We live single, you know, individuals now. And it sometimes takes a lot more time, you know, to sort of gather your thoughts and realise, yeah, do I want to be single forever? Do I want to, you know, piss this up this 2 years? You know, but then again, you've got to remember that some people are too domineering. I would never go into a relationship, you know, like you expressed there, where you give up everything. You shut your little space off, you get rid of your dogs, you lost your son, you moved in with this woman. You gave everything up, you felt like you had to prove yourself. What about her? She didn't have to prove herself to you. This is what I'm saying, you know. There's got to be give and take in a relationship. If there is no give and take, then there's no relationship. That's the classical mistake that a lot of men make. That because we're men, we're the ones who've got to, like, you know, prove ourselves and knock on to it and give and give and give. Well, in that sort of relationship, I don't see any future at all anyway. A relationship should start off even. It should start off with both of you understanding that you're human beings, you're adults, and both of you have things that you want. But you've also got to take into consideration what the other party, the other half of the relationship wants. And not just wants, but sometimes needs. Because people have needs, not just wants. And that's how you build a relationship. And I could never start a relationship off by giving away everything that I have in order to make the other half of my relationship feel like they're getting what? They're getting the control, the power. Because if that's the way that the relationship is looking, and you think you can gain back some ground later, then you're starting off from a mispremise, you know what I mean? It's a fallacy that there's any relationship there. Basically, what you become is she doesn't want any animals in the house, no pets, you're her pet, you know? And she's going to deal with you and feed you and give you cuddles when she feels like it. That's not a relationship. I know you said you loved each other, you told her every day, no, and you get, you know, but you know, that's, if you don't have other avenues of expression other than just that, then you know, you're being controlled, and that's it. I could never get in a relationship like that. I did have a relationship like that, don't get me wrong, you know, and this is why I'm saying, you know, I could never go back to that sort of relationship. It needs to be a relationship where we like to be with each other at the time we're with each other because we like to be with each other. And we don't have any red lines or delineated sort of ideas of behaviour or what should be said or what should be, you know what I mean? It's a relationship. You try to learn about each other. It shouldn't be a position where you've got to learn about her or she's got to learn about you and fit in. No. You should be trying to learn about each other and adjust to each other's sort of likes, dislikes, you know what I mean? It's got to be a quid pro quo. That's what a relationship is, a proper relationship. And it can take years to knock all the edges off of each other, you know what I mean? That's what you're doing in a relationship. You're like a master sort of, what do you call these people with chipped fucking stone, you know, not a carpenter, but you know, mason. You're a mason. You're chipping the rough edges off each other. But that's a two-way street. You're chipping the rough edges off of her, and she's chipping the rough edges off of you. That's the way a relationship, until you have a smooth, moulded two bricks that fit together, you know. And you know, it can take a lifetime to properly fit together. I've seen that in older people, like you said, you know, about them. And what they said, you know, I don't think they properly express themselves about, you know, well, you go through thick and thin together. But they were probably in a relationship where they didn't beat each other, they didn't hate each other, but they had problems. They had problems. Maybe he drank too much and she had to convince him with some help from the family to cut down his drinking or stop it altogether. And maybe it was a gambler and had to be convinced to give up gambling. He maybe was a womanizer, you know what I mean, and had to be convinced that, you know, that's not what your family needs. You've got to, you know, stick together. So there's all that, you know. It's all this chopping and carving and forming each other so you're a tight knit sort of, you know, unit. And that's really what a relationship is. And yeah, I'm 52 now and I'm not in a steady relationship because I haven't found a woman over the, well, I started getting into relationships, I suppose, when I was about 13, 14, started to, you know, date women and stuff. So yeah, 52 now. It's been a long time, but I still haven't met a woman that I felt we were getting anywhere close to that. But that's again because I'm from a different generation from my mother's generation or my grandparents' generation, where they didn't have the freedom to just go, well, fuck you, I'm just packing my bag and going and getting a flat. Because they couldn't do that back then. To leave your husband back then as a woman, was you were out in the street. To leave as a man meant you went and joined the Navy or the Army to go somewhere. You know, you didn't have the luxury we've got, the benefits we have of such easy access to jobs and accommodation that they had, you know, 100 years ago, 50, 80 years ago, 60 years ago. You know, that just didn't exist like it does today. So we are a different mentality, but we still have the same premise where relationships, it's hard fucking work. And the problem with our generation and the generations since the 60s is we don't like hard fucking work. We just don't. We set too many red lines like Obama and fucking Surrey at the moment. Too many red lines that can't be crossed. Whereas before there was no red lines, things happened, you dealt with it. And you had to deal with it because there was no other option in your life. We've got too many other options in our life. We have the option to just fuck off. If we couldn't just fuck off, if we had to deal with the situation within our relationships, we would fucking deal with them. It might make us miserable. You might live in misery for 20 years. But like that old couple you met in that burger bar, who are in their 70s, you know what I mean? Eventually when you get your 70s you realise it's all fucking piss. All that shit we went through in our 20s and 30s and 40s. It was all piss and we just went through it because we're human beings and that's the shit human beings go through. The thing today with young people is they don't want to go through that shit because they have an out. They have a way to avoid dealing and having to experience that shit. But all the previous generations before us, they didn't have an out. They didn't have a way to avoid it. They didn't have a way to run away. Well, not very many of us. Some did, you know. But 90% of the population fucking put up with their shit and you know, found some way of dealing with it. Anyway, I'm not sure if this helps you, but it's a bit.